Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September office hours of the Technology Center. For those of you who haven't had the pleasure of joining us before, this is a monthly event to allow us to get familiar with you, your needs, and to allow you to get familiar with who the Tech Center is and what is happening, what is coming down the road as far as the product releases go. We are back after a short break, couple of months over the summer, and we take this opportunity today to introduce ourselves to those of you who's new to the system or new to your role in the system. And we will talk about the grants that the Tech Center manages, the products that are associated with each of those grants, and you will hear from our executive director. You'll hear from our executive director and each of our directors, the updates and what to expect in the coming months. So with that, I'll introduce you to our executive director, Dr. Jennifer Coleman.
Thank you, Michael. And welcome, everyone. I want to echo what Michael said about our goal as the Technology Center is to make sure that we are available in support of all of you as our college stakeholders and those who interact directly with our students, and our goal of supporting them in their educational journeys, whatever that may be. I want to talk a little bit about the Technology Center. I know we have some new staff who've come on board to the system in the last few years, and the Technology Center does a lot. And while each stakeholder group may only see part of what we do, I wanted to make sure that we were conveying the sheer breadth of the services and support that we offer to the colleges. So the Technology Center is grant funded out of Prop 98 funds and the Chancellor's Office through the Digital Innovation and Infrastructure Division as part of the IDEA office at the Chancellor's Office. We are hosted by Butte College and report to the Vice President of Administration at Butte College. And there are 3 primary grants in this new fiscal year that I can't believe we're already a quarter into almost. It's the middle of September already. But we have one grant this year that's a 2-year term for the grant focused on student enrollment. We have a 1-year grant focused on data management, and we have another 2-year grant focused on system-wide infrastructure. We also work closely with other grantee partners with the same structure, the California Virtual Campus, hosted by Foothill De Anza, and Tech Connect, hosted at Palomar. And so we, in each of our grants, have a number of projects that we focus on, some of which we will touch on pretty detailed later in the presentation with our directors of those areas. But I wanted to talk about a few of the areas that are not mentioned in detail today, and some of the highlights that sometimes get left into the edges. The first thing that we do is we support the system, the college's connectivity to the CalRen fiber optic backbone through a partnership with CENIC, which is the Corporation for Education Networks in California, and allows for reduced cost connectivity for broadband for our colleges. We've been working on modernizing our circuits and getting every college a 10 gigabyte circuit minimally, with diversity and the ability to make sure that those circuits are up and running and installed and all of those kinds of things. So that's our partnership through CENIC. Right now we have 114 of our colleges engaged with us on CENIC. We also offer services through our Accessibility Center, and many of you may be familiar with their offerings. They do a series of webinars and workshops in support of accessibility services. And they're currently working to roll out what we're abbreviating as the ACMM, but is the Accessibility Capability Maturity Model, and will be scaled out across the system over the next several years, providing framework for colleges and districts to modernize and mature their accessibility strategies and supports. And so watch for more information coming from the Accessibility Center on that front. We rolled out the ACMM to a single college district earlier this summer. And they are headed to the Kern district a week and a half from now to roll it out to that multi-college district. So exciting things happening with our accessibility center. We also offer some security services, primarily focused now on software that's available for colleges to take advantage. Splunk and Tenable come to mind, along with InCommon and access to unlimited SSL certificates. And so we have limited security services. Much of the security work that the Tech Center had been focused on has now shifted to the Chancellor's Office, to their information security team. We hold a contract with EBSCO for library database subscriptions, and we've also supported the colleges with reimbursement for LSP subscriptions. We help support TTAC and SAC through work with the Chancellor's Office and the co-chairs of those committees with distribution of notes and action items and logistics for those groups. And all of our work is incumbent on stakeholder engagement and input from you all in the field. Your participation in our user groups, in all of the facets of the work that we do in support of our students, is critically important to informing how we move forward with enhancements, how we fix bugs, what we pursue in terms of future integrations and updates and those kinds of things. So I welcome you here today to be part of that feedback loop, and I encourage you to ask questions as we move through the presentation. Our goal in these monthly webinars is to make sure that you all have an opportunity to get those questions answered. So thank you for attending today, and I will turn it over to our director of our Student Success Suite, Jane Linder.
Thank you, Jennifer. My name is Jane Linder. I'm the interim director for the statewide student-facing systems that are developed and maintained by the CCC Technology Center. So I'm going to just round up on these. Most of these are, I know, very familiar to the field. But again, one of the reasons we do this sort of at the summertime is we know there's a lot of movement of staff, and many of you can be new in your role or new to the system. So the three primary products of the SSS suite are the Open CCC system-wide student account, the CCCApply suite of applications. The one that is the most used is the standard application for our US-based students. And then there's the non-credit, the online California College Promise Grant application, and our international application. And then we have an onboarding system, CCC MyPath, which is really the most recent member of the SSS, and it has the ability to be configured by colleges so that they can have tasks and messaging to the student that helps them transition from application to enrollment. It is the answer to that question. I've done the application, and what's next? So those are the products in the Student Success Suite. Right now, the Student Success Suite is focusing on a number of mandates and legislation. That's always a top priority for us. As you know, better than I, we have often a lot of legislation around our system in general and the application in particular. So we have a number of initiatives that we are working on right now with that in mind. The ID.me integration with the student account system is proceeding. This is a project the Chancellor's Office initiated last year with an RFI to identity verification, identity proofing vendors. ID.me was selected as a part of that process, and the Chancellor's Office's project team is managing this integration. The Tech Center is building out screens that will lead students through a process where once they either sign in or submit their new account to create their new account, all but a few student groups will be redirected to a landing page that will offer them the opportunity to verify their identity. And also there's an opt-out. So minors are certainly not a part of that, because at this point, ID.me doesn't really have a solution for minors, but they are working towards that. Now, all of the things I'm going to touch on, including the ID.me integration, will be part of our user group meeting tomorrow. And I'll be touching on that later on how you can actually join that meeting to get more details on all of these. The ID.me integration, we just got confirmation from the Chancellor's Office team that the target dates for for this integration will be end of October for the pilot, with a little bit more than 30-day pilot that's open to the system. And the Tech Center, which is our process with all major releases, will be also conducting a focused user acceptance testing with students and staff. And that's going to be pilot throughout November. And then the target for deployment into production is December 1st, which is a Friday. All right, the other things we're working on in order to support colleges through some of the mandates and legislation is a bulk account creation option in CCCApply Administrator, where we have a new role that actually supports staff who work with instructional service agreements or other things like incarcerated student programs, where the students really don't have any access to the online account system and can't really create their open CCC ID. So this is going to allow for us to support college staff in this role where they can kind of bulk account create CCCIDs to fill that gap. Other things we're supporting, there's legislation for the associate degree for transfer. We're altering the majors list in CCCApply as part of the support for this, and are going to have a solution in the springtime where students who select associate degree for transfer will then only be able to select from a filtered list of majors that apply to that selection. And that's just a better way to guide them through that process. Other things that are in the works are, there's an expansion of the American Indian Alaska Native tribal list that'll be coming again. This is, right now we're aiming for spring for this to support all of the 576 tribes that are federally recognized. So no longer limited to mostly California tribes, with a few others that have populations that are large in the state. It's really to recognize all of our American Indian Alaska Native students. So all of those are the things that we're kind of focusing on at this point. Okay, next slide. All right, the other thing that we do, other than just responding to some of these new mandates and initiatives, is the past 3 years, we've been focusing on what is the future, especially for the application. And so our goal is really to have a welcoming front door to the CCC, a more welcoming front door with our CCCApply application. We've analyzed a lot of the limitations of the current system as part of an initiative with the Chancellor's Office. There's an Accenture team at the Chancellor's Office has been looking at every question on the application and whether it's really necessary or not. And again, those of you who are familiar with the application know this already, but about 85% of the fields are either mandated by legislation or by federal code or ed code. And so at this point, it's removing that we have to engage with the legislator, and we have to have the Chancellor's Office, basically champion removing things if they're not really necessary. And, for example, we have student populations where residency and citizenship really isn't a question. I'm thinking, again, things like students like dual enrollment and incarcerated students who are their fees and everything is paid for. So they don't really need to be evaluated for whether they are in-state or out-of-state tuition. So looking hard at that, and then building tailored workflows for student work groups, that's where we need to go. We need to display to dual enrollment students, for example, only one option when it comes to what their educational background is, not 11, because many of them get very confused with that. So we're really looking at this hard, along with the Chancellor's Office partnership. And there's a task force that's going to be engaging with stakeholder input from all over the system to help us work on this transformation. So we're really looking to limit data gathering to only what's needed to admit the student. We've already started student testing, screen design, and text for the new system. And we're going to be building in messaging, reminders, analytics that allow us to engage with the student throughout the entire process and have a lot more support for that process. And again, more analytics to track obstacles that keep students from completing their application. Right now, we have some Google Analytics that tell us what page the students might hesitate on, but with the new system and the architecture that we've built out, we're able to really find out what field in particular are they really struggling with, and really analyze much more closely the effectiveness of the application. So this is the future that we're looking towards. You can go to the next slide. So here's where we are in that transformation. We've already gotten through 2 steps of the 4 that we're aiming for. As I said, we've been really thinking hard about this for about 3 years. So the first step was transforming the account system. And so we had our newest account system, which had enhanced security. And along with that was infrastructure that allowed us to deploy any kind of updates to the account system and any of the SSS products with 0 downtime, which has been a huge help to us in terms of being able to deploy our features and fixes faster, but also a huge help to the system because these are mission critical systems. And we know that any downtime can really adversely affect our students. So with the 0 downtime deployments, we've been able to deploy many releases. I think in the first year, something like 32 releases. In the first year we did this with 0 downtime and no impact to the students. Previous to that first, the deployment that gave us 0 downtime, the last CCCApply deployment took 2 to 3 days of downtime. So it's been a huge help. This last fiscal year, we finished with the new apply architecture that allows for the, thank you. The new apply architecture that allows for those tailored workflows I was talking about, where we can really guide the student. We can find out up front, where they're coming from and where they need to go and guide them with a lot more of a tailored workflow than we have available to us with the architecture today. That architecture has been completed. We've built out new user interface designs and gotten feedback from students on that. And we completed a phase 1 demo, which was actually focused on a dual enrollment workflow. We don't have a dual enrollment application. I don't want you thinking that, but our phase 1 demo showed the capabilities of how we can build that dual enrollment application now with this new system and have that guided pathway through the application that we want to provide for all of our students. So step 3 is our first play in terms of porting a new application to this architecture is the non-credit application. And the reason we wanted to do that is that, again, this non-credit application has no residency or citizenship section, and it is kind of the baseline of the CCCApply fields that are also in the standard application. So we wanted to do the non-credit application first and get pilot feedback from the colleges, get that done, and then work with the task force to see what questions we could eliminate from the standard application going forward. So that's where we're at right now. Obviously, the ID.me integration is taking up a lot of our resources, but we're still going to move forward on our non-credit application in the new system and hope to have that out in not too far in the future. So the last step is really a new standard application. And like I said, with prioritizing the tailored application workflows, first-time freshmen workflows and dual enrollment student workflows. We've had a lot of input from our user groups and work groups on the kind of tailoring we could do for our various student groups. And as I said, across all these steps, we're getting input from the field and feedback from students and building in some acceptance testing. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jane. I think I saw a couple of questions come in and someone raised their hand as well. So okay. If you're good, let's take those real quick.
Yeah. The first questions, Jane, are regarding something we've been talking about here at the Tech Center, and that is transcript questions in CCCApply. So yeah. Larry wants to know, is the high school transcript questions the same as placement, or is the placement a different process? So I will say that within CCCApply, there are high school transcript questions. We ask about GPA, highest grade, and course completed in English and math. And those can be used to inform placement locally, or they also are used as part of the multiple measures placement service, which is a separate service that has to be opted into for the placement recommendation to be provided to the college. Some colleges use that transcript information to inform local processes, and it is all delivered as part of the application payload. The survey questions, the transcript questions are not an opt-in. Several years ago, the Chancellor's Office made the decision that all students would see those questions. So all students see them. And so it is something that's part of the application data that's delivered for all students. And rumors that the placement questions are going away. The questions are not on the list to be taken out of the application. They're used for various purposes. The multiple measures placement service is currently under discussion for term of support going forward, but those placement questions, I'm sorry, the transcript questions are part of CCCApply, which is separate. So those are separate tools and outcomes for colleges to utilize with their systems. And if you have additional questions specific to the potential to utilize those transcript questions for placement, please reach out to your college experience manager. Michael will talk about how to do that so that we can provide that support. And so the questions regarding transcript information are poised to stay, and we can help with how you might make sure that those are being delivered and stored locally and leveraged for placements locally.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. Yeah, this has been, I know, a bit of a hot topic that we're getting a lot of information on. So we wanted to make sure you understood. I have to say that based on student survey comments about these fields, I have sometimes, talked with our SSS user group about not prompting those questions for our college graduates, because many of them get a little upset about being prompted for high school GPA when they've completed at least a associate's degree or higher. So, but really, I don't think we're going to be touching them at all at this point. So if you guys have any thoughts on that going forward, again, as Jennifer pointed out, we'll have you contact your college experience manager and they can help you with more information. Right.
We also have, Jane, a question about the Social Security number in the non-credit application. And I know that's been a point of discussion as well, if you want to touch on that briefly.
Yes. And that is something we have in our backlog. Right now, given the other mandates that we're juggling, I just didn't put it on the short list here, but we do have that as an item that we want to provide. It is being provided in the background now. So for example, if you have a student who had filled out a 4-credit application and provided their Social Security number, if they fill out a non-credit application later for some purpose certificate or something like that, it will pull from the student's record that information and send it with a non-credit, but we realize that that's happening less and less. So we definitely want to support that going forward.
Jane, another question about the dependent question, the addition of the parent dependent question and how it doesn't match the MIS reporting. Do you want to touch a little bit on those changes?
Yeah. So
see the smile on Jane's face, another point of conversation across.
I know. So I just actually worked with the financial aid team and the research team at the Chancellor's Office about this. There was a lag in time between two different applications and two different teams in implementing this. So the actual format for the field was lagged the implementation of the field on the CCPG app. So it was really, I think, a situation where we just didn't have, collaboration as early as we needed to on this. So what's happened is the CCCApply question mirrors the question that's in the CCPG app. And we really had to do that to have consistency, but we did revisit this recently. And so in the January timeframe is when we always come out with our new version of the online CCPG application. And on the online version, as well as the PDF version, the financial team is developing, we've revised that question. What we've done is there's right now the CCPG has a question about if you have, dependents under 18 in the header. Instead, it's going to be question number 6 on the CCPG online app. And it's, which is a standard question, which is, do you have dependents that depend, where you support them for more than half of their income? If the student says yes to that, it'll ask 2 follow-ups, one of which is, give us the number of dependents over 18 and the number of dependents under 18. So that's going to actually mean that you can specifically put that information in the expected fields in the MIS, in that SB 39 MIS field. That will actually be the CCCApply standard application will be aligning to that change in CCPG. So everybody's on the same
And just to clarify, this is the student parent question that was just recently introduced.
This is correct, yes. And again, it's asking the same question. It's just with a little bit more information on, number of dependents over and under. So largely the same. In the meantime, what's the timing? So January timeframe. So we're aligning to the new CCPG 24-25 term. That's where the change is going to be in CCPG, and then CCCApply is going to align to that. So January 2024.
All right. Thank you. I think there's a question also, related question. We also need the child's birthday to remove the student parent from the priority group when the child ages out.
Yeah, I'll have to find out. I had actually reached out. I'm going to have to work with the MIS team on that. The Apply is supporting primarily, of course, the reporting and whether or not they have them. I think, and I don't want to speculate on how you would actually track that or not. But for now, we've been asked not to do that. So, you'll have the information for reporting. You have whether they were currently, as of their latest application, whether that's CCPG or CCCApply, you'll have the information on, whether they have somebody above or below. As with the last field, the last guidance I got was whatever was the most recent application that they filled out. If they've identified that they have someone under 18, that's how priority registration is based. But I do understand the desire for the birth date. Is just right now we haven't been actually advised to add that on the application.
Thank you, Jane. I think one more before we move on. There's a question: will the new non-credit applications make it easier to reduce the amount of duplicate accounts a college can get between applications?
That one is something that we've been grappling with again for a long time. We have a struggle with, part of this is a process thing, and part of it is we're wanting to put in more duplicate identifiers, but we do actually tell a student when they have a duplicate application. I mean, we do have messaging that lets them know they've got a duplicate application. If the student chooses to ignore that, it's really hard to stop them. And we know that there are some times when when high schools are doing mass enrollments or mass application drives for the community college system, where if a student can't get in or can't get access to their account, they just have them do a new one. So part of this is education in terms of really trying to encourage the system to work with students and tell them not to just create a duplicate account. And this is not just us, of course. This is across the internet sphere, the global sphere. By accident, one of the members of my family ended up with 3 New York Times cooking accounts without even really realizing what, but one was a Google, one was an Apple, and one was something else. So we have to try to make sure that people understand not to do that. So we've been trying to add messaging and warnings on that. On the other side, we are also trying to figure out processes, validations, and additional things that we can do. So this is an ongoing conversation, and we'll be sharing more as we go forward.
All right, I'm trying to keep up. I think Jennifer is answering in chat as well. Let's see. I think Jennifer is answering a question about the tentative date for the non-credit application pilot testing.
Yeah, with ID.me right now, our resources are focused on that through the first half of the fiscal year. So, we're hoping we had hoped to get it out in the 23-24 fiscal year. I'm not sure with the ID.me work if we're going to be able to make that target. It was kind of nice because we absolutely hit our target for the step 1 and 2, but we are working to prioritize that and get that out as quickly as possible.
Thank you. And when is the number of dependents over 18 and under 18 questions going to be available on the application, or are the questions already on the application?
It'll be January timeframe to align with the new CCPG 24-25 application.
Awesome. And there's a suggestion on whether when we send notification for submitted application, if we can include a note indicating that it could be a duplicate application, a suspected duplicate account.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting idea and not one I thought
about.
Yes,
and we are working with I put this in the chat, but we're working with the Chancellor's Office MIS team on duplicate handling, and they're working on error checks on their side, and we're working with our bulk tool in how to best address those. So more information to come in the new year.
Right. Yeah. It's a problem we're all working on, because we know that it's not just difficult for the staff and kind of the systems that we use to support students, but it can hurt the students themselves if their records aren't all together. So, all right.
Awesome.
More to come on that.
Thank you, Jane.
There's one more slide.
Yeah.
All right, so this is just a pitch. If you're interested in really knowing what's up with the Student Success Suite, we talk sometimes ad nauseum, but we talk a lot about all of those bulleted things that I talked about and some of the questions that you've had in the Student Success user group. We meet quarterly for about an hour and a half, and we go over these things and, bounce ideas off each other and try to, come up with, solutions to some of these thorny problems. So please reach out to your college experience manager with that email that I've put there and that Jennifer has posted on chat with a request to join these groups. The next user group meeting is tomorrow. And we're going to get into a lot of detail, more detail on the IDME integration and other stuff. We also have a spam subcommittee and a private online community where you can share information and receive information about fraud patterns and things like that. We can't post this information publicly because bad actors tend to trawl through our public documentation looking for any clues on how to circumvent the spam filter built into our applications, as well as other tools that we use to try to block bad actors. So we can't publish that. It really is the best thing is to get somebody in your staff on the spam subcommittee, and as many people as want to join can join the private online community as well. So reach out to those college experience managers, get on that, and I think you'll find there's a lot of information there in detail that will be helpful to you. Last thing is register for an account on ccctechnology.info. That's where our private online community is. So you can't see it unless you've been invited, but it's there. And, there's a system alerts category where we have a lot of information about, so we post our release updates when we're going to be, pushing to pilot and production with links to the release notes with all the details on what's changing. It's a really great resource for you to follow. Phil, all you have to do is reach out through that one email that goes to our 3 customer or college experience manager, and the one for your college will reach out and contact you.
Thank you, Jane. Appreciate it. We'll revisit the questions, any questions that might have come up before we close the session. But let's move on to Steve Klein for any updates on the ID side. Steve, all yours.
Hey, thanks. Hello, everyone. My name is Steve Klein, and I'm the Director of Services around Infrastructure and Data and our Curriculum Management projects. And I'll be talking about services that are less visible, but equally foundational to the colleges and needs of the Chancellor's Office. And the services that Jennifer and Jane talked about generate lots of data for our system. And that data supports both institutional and instructional improvement. And what I'll be speaking about are some activities that have recently become available and what's coming up in the areas of our CCC data effort. CCC data is a series of environments made up by the data lake, a data warehouse, and our data warehouse report server that is accessible to college researchers and researchers at the Chancellor's Office. And in the area of new data sources that will become available in this coming fiscal year, we're excited to announce that the new data model from Instructure called Canvas Data 2 will be included and available for colleges to access. And what's particularly noticeable about this data set is the outcomes data that colleges have been looking for quite a long time. We will provide an announcement later this fall on the Canvas Data 2 release for colleges, so more upcoming there. We'll also be making available the MyPath data sets available to college researchers, which will be segmented by individual colleges, and also releasing fraud data from our bidirectional SuperGlue fraud reporting mechanism. Items that are less visible, but equally interesting to the foundation of our system is we continue to update all the data sets that are in the data warehouse which are accessible by college researchers and the Chancellor's Office. And we're updating an entirely new set of data pipelines. Well, exciting to talk about, nothing really to see, but this all supports that data transfer that allows colleges and the Chancellor's Office to find and use the data in the CCC data warehouse. Another element of our CCC data environment is our e-transcript service. And at this point, we have 108 colleges using e-transcript services. And while most of those colleges are using them to send transcripts to four-year institutions, our CBC Course Exchange is making use of the e-transcript service to be able to share course completion data for students from the teaching colleges to the home colleges. Next slide. Another element of our infrastructure is our SuperGlue integration platform. So we've had lunch hours dedicated to SuperGlue, and we've seen a great growth in the installment of the SuperGlue adapters at all of our colleges now. So what that allows us to do is deliver data to colleges regardless of the student information system that the college is using. So we have succeeded in deploying that at each of our 116 community colleges. We've also been working on an integration with Ellucian Ethos to support delivery of data directly to Ethos-enabled environments in the Banner and colleague systems. We've been growing the bidirectional fraud reporting elements of SuperGlue so colleges can return fraud data that they have found at their college to be shared with other colleges. This is an evolving service that we will continue to develop this year. We currently have 8 colleges with about 10 more in an installation process to be able to share back the locally identified fraud data. We still have some topics to explore in that area around governance and such. So more to come on that, but that work continues. As you heard, we have new data fields in CCCApply, and we update our data environments to mirror those, including the parent field and ID.me and additional upgrades to the SSS 2.0 suite that Jane talked about. We are developing an API or a way to deliver CCCApply data directly to student information systems. So that is an activity that will take place in this fiscal year, as well as an API management platform that will allow colleges to have an easier time accessing data directly from the tech center services to their own colleges, whether it's the student information system or to their reporting and information tools. That's our infrastructure and data elements. The next suite of services are what we call our curriculum management tools, which support college staff involved in the course articulation and course and program approval processes. The first one is our curriculum identification system, or CID. A number of new elements there include an added workflow automation to support our automations with revised descriptors. This is just in continuing to support automatic processes so that that colleges aren't left having to input by hand individual course information to be submitted. And this includes being able to look up and sync records with our COCI system, which is our Chancellor's Office Curriculum Inventory. The CID site is going through a public redesign that we'll see in this current fiscal year, and a deeper integration with our curriculum inventory services, again, to further automate these processes to support course articulation. A member of our staff is also participating in the Common Course Numbering Task Force. So we'll see changes that will come out of those recommendations in our future CID releases. And then our Chancellor's Office Curriculum Inventory tool, or sometimes called COCI or COCI. We've added bachelor degree programs, upper division courses, Area F, which are ethnic studies courses there. We've developed application alerts and role-specific dashboards. So your articulation officers at your colleges are really receiving the benefits of this to support course and program approval processes. We continue to upgrade and update form submissions, and we're currently adding support for competency-based education courses and programs. Those are the updates for our COCI and CID elements. And I think, unless there's any questions, that's our infrastructure and data and curriculum management update.
Let's see, Beth, do we have any questions for Steve?
We don't.
Right. Okay, and I see, Phil, I see a question from you about your college experience manager. I'll address that in just a quick second. And I think I see Jennifer is addressing other questions. So let's move on. For those who haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Michael Tathuaswamy. I'm the Director of Enabling Services and Support here at the Tech Center. Enabling Service, if you haven't had an opportunity to work with us, we are an implementation team that handles every implementation that your college might need, whether it's related to SSS or IID, like we talked about. So if you're implementing, let's say, California Promise Grant, or if you have a new staff on team and they want to revisit Apply rules or want to get familiar with Apply application settings in the admin side, you work with our team. And likewise, on the IID side, if you are looking to gain access to the data warehouse, Direct Connect service, or even get set up with credentials for data warehouse, you work with this single unified implementation team. We are all about your experience. So when you are working, reaching out to the tech center, our college experience managers, who previously used to be known as college relationship managers, their single goal is to help make sure you have a smooth and terrific experience working with the tech center. So when the moment starts, you drop a question to them through an email or reach out to them by phone. They take your query from there. They look at what is needed for you and your school to deliver a satisfactory experience, and they run with it internally. They align the resources and deliver the outcome that you desire. So we'll at the bottom of that slide here, there's a link which will be live when we share this with you. But today you can drop an email to crms@ccctechcenter.org. Let them know that you're looking to connect with your college experience manager, and your college experience manager will get in touch with you. And that list is also available on our website. You can find that, but if you drop them an email at crms@ccctechcenter.org, it's probably the easiest route. Our goal for those of you who are already live with our products, be it Apply, MyPath, like Jane mentioned, or you have SuperGlue in place, is to help you maximize adoption of the product, get the most value you can out of the products that you have deployed. And our team, the college experience managers, who now also lead the implementation projects, on a quarterly basis, will review your configuration and look at whether they have any suggestions that they can share with you to help you get more out of the products. Our team also handles ongoing training for staff. We often see new staff step into roles, and rather than you trying to figure things out on your own, reach out to our college experience managers. They'll be happy to set up one-on-one training sessions or a team training session if you have a bunch of new stuff, and we will help you get up to speed with the products. So in that sense, we also aim to help you with business continuity. So when you have new staff stepping in and they are trying to understand what configuration you have in place and why, reach out to us. We are happy to share notes from the implementation period, which might help you understand why your predecessors might have chosen, the configuration they chose for a particular product. Support. So our team handles both student support and staff support. We have a dedicated folks on team who handle anytime student PAI comes into play, they step in. We also have third-party level 1 agents who handle most of our calls. But anytime student data sensitivity comes into play, that is handled by a dedicated team of employees, tech center employees. Many of you might have noticed that the ccctechnology.info platform started looking differently from this fiscal year, from July. We have started rolling everything into a single unified platform. We utilize Zendesk, and with a focus of providing multi-channel support, both for students as well as staff. Students now have access to a help center, which is basically help articles that they can review to find the solutions or the resolve the problem that they're dealing with. Or they have a community, which is available to staff as well, where they can ask a question that their fellow peers, the students can jump in and answer for them, thereby preventing them the need for them to call or support team, either call them or email them or hop on chatbot, which is now available as well. And we are already looking at enhancing that chatbot that is available, replacing it with an AI-powered Zendesk chatbot or an AWS chatbot, and that's in evaluation right now. Our team and the staff support and student support team also is part of the feedback loop. They take feedback based on the support issues that we are seeing. They look for patterns, emerging problems that we should tackle before it becomes a major problem. And they take that feedback to the product teams, both SSS and IAD teams, and work with them to try to arrive at a resolution before it becomes a major system-wide problem. And of course, our focus is always to provide better end-user experience and continue to reduce the wait times. Student wait times is of particular interest. We have been continuing to poke at ways and look at how we can reduce the amount of wait time when a student account is disabled. For example, we have gone from anywhere from, it could have been 48 to 72 hours, and now most of the tickets, we are closing them out under 24 hours. So I'm very happy with the direction, and we continue to look at how we can get better. And like Jane mentioned, the Tech Center team here is looking at the next generation application system. And to align with that, me and my team, we are looking at how we can reimagine end user support so that when that next gen application, is rolled out, you are looking at a much more seamless support system where there isn't a lot of, transfers via, the students having to step away from the application and call support. Instead, we are looking at how to integrate support with an application through the chatbot, where they can get the help they need without losing their place in the application. A lot of the colleges and high schools, roll out enrollment fairs, conduct enrollment fairs to boost enrollments, and that's something that is most importance to us. We want to make sure when your team spends the time and effort to put on an enrollment fair, that things go so smooth and seamlessly for your potential students. So to that effort, we are now working on creating a process where you notify us 2 weeks before the event. Let us know that you're going to be hosting an event. Let us know roughly how many potential students you're expecting, the time, duration, and also share an IP address or multiple IP addresses that we should whitelist so that the applications don't get stuck in spam filter. What we are also going to be asking schools to do is designate a staff for these events who will take on the responsibility of verifying the identity of the student. That is the part that causes a lot of the delay, our team needing to verify the identity of the student. If that's something your team can take on, then we will create a separate form for that particular event where the designated staff can submit a ticket, and those tickets will be prioritized during the event for our team. So they will work on it as soon as that comes in, and that this helps ensure we can get your students moving while they are there at the fair. Our college experience managers are getting ready to share enrollment fair and dual enrollment workshop best practices document with the schools. So please be on the lookout for an email from them. And in the meantime, if any of you are working on hosting an enrollment fair or dual enrollment workshop here in the very near future, you can send an email to our staff support email ID, which is what you see there, staff support ccctc@openccc.zendesk.com. Let us know when the event is scheduled. Share any IP address that you need us to whitelist, and please reach out and designate a staff who will help verify the identity of the student, and we can get things moving faster. With that, I think we can move on to the general updates. Beth, let me pause there. Do you have any questions for Jane, Steve, or myself?
Not yet.
Okay, I like that. All right, so some general notes here. Like I mentioned, here's the email ID. Previously, the college relationship managers, they're now called the college experience managers. Their focus is to ensure you have a smooth experience working with the tech center, no matter what your need is. So you can reach out to them at crms@ccctechcenter.org. Any student-facing application, do you need a SuperGlue upgraded? Have you put a new infrastructure in place, and do you need to deploy SuperGlue again? Reach out to us. We are happy to help take care of those needs. And like Jane mentioned earlier, the ccctechnology.info is the portal for our staff. Please go and register an account, and then you can follow different categories and of interest is the system alerts category that Jane talked about. If you follow, you will have the option to follow just new posts or also comments on existing posts. You can choose, what updates you like to receive. That's where we post the updates about upcoming releases and whether those are going to have any downtime. So it helps you stay informed. We have a forum there where you can post a question where your peers can jump in and answer that, or one of our team members will hop in and provide notes for you. And it is also the home of the private spam discussion group that Jane mentioned earlier, which is only by invite. So if you have any faculty staff in your team who should be part of the spam group, please drop an email to your college experience managers. Again, if you don't know who they are, just drop them an email at crms@ccctechcenter.org, and they will send you a link to a form that you can fill out that puts your request in a queue, and we can get that taken care of. All right. We still have a few minutes, I think. We can take any questions you might have.
We do have a question now from Adam Howard. For enrollment fair support, do we need to notify you if the enrollment fair is coming up from on campus with the college's IP addresses?
That's a great question, Adam. Wherever the enrollment fair is happening, when those applications are submitted, what IP address is our system going to see? That's the one we want to whitelist. So depending on how you configure the event and whether it is using your campus IP addresses, or if it's at a off-campus event, whatever IP address that you think we would need to whitelist so that they don't get caught in the spam filter. On that note, I'll also add, there is a general perception that just because IP addresses are whitelisted, applications won't get in spam filter. That's not necessarily true. The IP address is for the bot service to not block you, and Jane or Jennifer, feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. But that is to make sure the traffic isn't blocked, but to apply. But the spam filter, if it still sees in the data any flags, it might still put an application in the spam filter. So please definitely keep an eye on the spam filter as well during the event.
We have a statement from Roseanne. We've had multiple cases of legitimate applications that were submitted using our own computers on campus that were blocked.
Right, and that might fall into the scenario that I'm talking about. And Jane, I don't know if you have any additional data on that as to what might potentially be at play in a situation like that when it's a campus IP address.
A lot of times it is a situation where it sees any one IP address having a lot of applications associated to it does tend to bump up the spam score because that, we can't, it can't necessarily always tell the difference between college computer unless we have the IP whitelisted.
Yeah.
An actor who's sitting somewhere globally and submitting, hundreds of applications or dozens of applications.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, Beth.
I'm sorry, there's another statement from Roseanne. How would you recommend we bring these cases to the attention of the tech center?
Yeah, if you can submit a staff support ticket and share the IP addresses, it could be computers on your lab or a learning center. Now, the learning centers and areas like that get a little bit complicated because again, you don't want to whitelist IP addresses and have maybe you do, have the application skip the spam filter. But if the bad actors understand and recognize that, then they start coming on campus and are applying. And if they're not restricted, then that becomes a challenge. Then you now have a flood of fraudulent applications from bad actors that you're processing. So that's where it gets kind of tricky. Like, how do you separate that, and how do you, which way do you want to tackle processing and identifying those?
Yeah, and we are looking at that because that can absolutely happen. And what will happen with that is, for example, some of the tools that we use that evaluate those IP addresses will, based on data that marks some of them as confirmed fraud down the line, and will then start to associate even that internal IP address as sort of fraudulent. So yeah, so it's not always 100% solution. We're looking at all these things together and trying to balance and make sure that legitimate students are as impacted as lightly as possible, whilst also trying to balance the security. It's something that we're often having to reevaluate and adjust.
We've got another question from Adam Howard. Can the college's IP addresses be whitelisted permanently?
I believe when you submit them, they are.
Right. And then that goes back to the question of, okay, do you want to leave it open, and then you run the risk of more fraudulent applications coming through because they're coming from your IP address, right? And then you have to deal with those flood of applications. So it's not striking that balance. But yes, once you have that IP address listed, unless you let us know that it's no longer a valid IP, it remains whitelisted. Yeah. Rupa, I see you have your hand raised. Sandoval, I don't know if the participants have the ability to unmute themselves and ask a question.
No, we're on mute, so we're using chat for questions, please.
Okay. Rupa, if you can type in your question. Thank you. But while we wait for Rupa, do you have any other questions?
Roz has a good question, or rather a suggestion for additional information. Again, we try to include additional information as we can in the application data for things like, address override. That's something that is actually, we noticed, associated a lot of times with flags. So we've started sending that flag to colleges so they know, what the student did there. In terms of the data points and what's reported by fraud as another college. I know that there's a desire to, right now, the bidirectional SuperGlue thing is a tool that you could use for that, because when a college reports an application or as fraudulent, the bidirectional SuperGlue will automatically send out notifications to any other colleges that have reported that, letting them know what college reported that as fraudulent, and letting you know that there's been fraud associated to the account that submitted applications at your college as well. So we do have a tool for that if you wanted to get on that. And I know that our enabling services team has said it's only a matter of a few hours to actually implement bidirectional SuperGlue. It's pretty swift.
Yeah, I know Jane, like Steve mentioned earlier, I think the team is working on expanding that service. So if you have the bandwidth to implement bidirectional SuperGlue and submit applications through the API, we would highly recommend that. And the services is being worked on. It's gonna, expand, and then schools get notified. So definitely something worthwhile.
So the best way to handle the legitimate applications, like I said, right now, we are constantly balancing how severely to evaluate the things that indicate fraud and balance that, how many legitimate applications get trapped versus how many false positive versus what it's blocking of fraud. But the thing that actually is very important is for colleges to get onto the spam filter utility and CCCApply administrator and, when mark those as legitimate, get them out of the spam filter. That actually goes into the logic so that we learn what's legitimate versus what's not legitimate.
Jane, I don't know if you were responding to Rupa's question, which is what it's related to. So what if it's not IP address and legitimate applications are being blocked? How should we handle that?
Yeah, because it's the input from the field actually helps, learn, helps the system to learn to do things better.
Yeah, and Rosa and Rupa, that's probably the pain point you and many other schools run into, like Rosa mentioned, working the applications in the spam filter dashboard, it's time consuming. And the question is, anything we can do to improve the staff, or comment is anything we can do to improve the staff interface would be greatly appreciated. Jane, is there any updates coming on that front?
None that we can really
spam filter. Okay.
Filter. Again, the reason we have a private group is we can't do this with a recording that we're distributing widely. Right. The Inspector General has told us not to. So join the private spam group, and these are the questions you want to ask in there. You get a lot more detailed information as well as input from other colleges.
Awesome. Matt's question might also fall in the same level. Are we able to include why we think it's fraud and include a confidence level?
Actually, Matt, that's been a great suggestion, and you have had that for a while, I know. We're working with the bidirectional SuperGlue team on how this is going to, be enhanced now that it's being deployed in the system. And, that's certainly something that we're talking about, because coming up with a definition of fraud, what fraud looks like, and if we can, get a common understanding of the system, is really what we need. So this is actually going to be a topic that we talk about in October at our next spam committee.
All right. I think, let's say, false positive, comment from Sean, false positives and false negatives will likely have an inverse relationship. So it may be important to decide which way we would like to err. Absolutely.
Right now, we do err on the side of caution, meaning we might let a few more fraudulent go through because we don't want to impact. We want to make sure the false positives are as low as possible. So, but again, this is something we could discuss.
One more comment from Nathaniel. Something we were discussing yesterday was when students who don't know their own address, who incorrectly fill out the form, or 3 who make up a SSN because the parent tells them not to share it.
Right. So look like fraudulent students. So yeah, yeah.
And that is something we're addressing with the next generation of Apply. Some of these things that have started coming up over the years, students not knowing what a zip code is, not understanding the different types of addresses that we ask for. The SSN is always a topic of consideration, and trying to provide a simple form that we are able to put into a Lexile level, that's a reading level that our students are able to process, that we're not using academic language that for us is just standard, but for them is very hard to understand. All of that is part of our discussion around what's next with CCCApply, to acknowledge that we, on the surface, things look straightforward, but based on what our students have experienced and what they're familiar with, they don't mail letters. They don't know what addresses look like. They don't get mail in the mail. There's a lot of changes that we can make to simplify that process, and that ultimately impact our fraud profiles as well. And so hopefully we can address both of those things.
I don't see any new questions come in. So thank you so much for taking time today to hop in here with us. If you're new or if you're, joining us, returning to these sessions, we sincerely appreciate your time. We appreciate your feedbacks, questions. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, Jane, Steve, thank you so much for hopping on here with us and giving us an update for the field. Truly appreciate it. Sandoval, thanks to you as well. And Beth and Rami, I think they've dropped off. Thanks to you all. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Sandoval, are we good?